Welcome back to part two of our conversation with John Croce, CEO of Phybridge. John, let's go ahead and dive into the case study.
All right, wonderful. Before I get into the specifics of the TransUnion story, just to set the stage, we discussed earlier about the importance of a customer realizing the return on investment as they look to move from where they are to this UC platform. Mm-hmm. You know, there's three buckets that the customer needs to consider, and we need to consider as the ones providing them support. Firstly is the foundation. The foundation is the switch fabric and the wiring infrastructure that supports the gear that you layer on it. Yep. Those are investments. Mm-hmm. The true return on investment is the application layer. Right. Is how do we take as much of the budget as possible and allocate it to the application layer so that the users start using these great applications, driving a better ROI. Right. So if we take a look at the TransUnion story and how it all fits into that whole value proposition, is TransUnion, the IT director had a budget of $1.8 million approved for an infrastructure rehaul to support their IP telephony strategy. Mm-hmm. And to optimize their LAN. And the methodology that they were considering, of course, was the daisy chain methodology. One of our partners, who was not a provider to TransUnion, actually was prospecting them. Mm-hmm. And mentioned to them that there's this innovation that allows them to leverage their existing infrastructure. So it perked his interest. Mm-hmm. He just got approval for $1.8 million, and you're saying I can do something differently and save a lot of money. So he went over the economics of it just on the back of the envelope, and he said, my estimate is that we can do the same thing for about $300,000. Wow. So he said, I don't believe it. So our partner, as well as one of our guys, went and visited with the customer and went over the strategy and talked to the customer about the paradigm shift, being you already have a voice infrastructure. You have 10 floors of users. Mm-hmm. All that infrastructure comes back to the main closet. It's working today, correct? Mm-hmm. And of course he said yes. Said, well, with our technology, we simply transform that infrastructure into an IP path for your phones. Mm-hmm. And you converge centrally. And we went through the value proposition of why you would want to do that. Mm-hmm. And of course, the cost savings. More important, quality of service is a lot easier to achieve because the data does not impact it. Voice continuity, the fact that voice will continue.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
That's a huge one. And then lack of disruption while you migrate, because you're not going out and replacing the infrastructure. Yep. You're leveraging what you have. And what got them, and what not a lot of customers think about, is the future. Data LANs change every 3 to 5 years to increase the speed for data requirements. Mm-hmm. Well, if you have the phone connecting a computer to it, and you have PoE switches, well, every time you need to change the data speeds, you got to replace perfectly good PoE and a perfectly good phone because the computer's connected to it. Yep. It's totally inefficient. Yep. Whereas with this topology that we're recommending, the phone survives on its own with its own PoE. The data switches need to be upgraded to gigabit, 2 gig, 10 gig, but it's non-PoE. Right. Right. So he didn't even. So he said, you know what? I'd like to trial that. Mm-hmm. And we said, this is the beauty of our technology. Because you are leveraging an existing infrastructure, and that infrastructure is point to point, meaning from the desk all the way back to the central closet, is dedicated to wires. The beauty is you can take users on every floor, pick the pairs in the main closet, mm-hmm. and that identified to that endpoint 10 floors away, and move them. Wow. And that's what he did. Yeah. He actually piloted users on every floor. And his comments back to us as, John, you need to understand that the greatest value I got was not just the savings, mm-hmm. was that I eliminated all my risk before I invested the first dollar. Yeah. When you think of putting the voice on a data switch fabric, you're actually having to make a significant investment in all new switch fabric before you can trial that voice solution. Yep. That's a big risk. Yep. Someone's reputation is on the line in that organization. Yep. And that's a big risk. Mm-hmm. And a lot of reasons why customers haven't migrated to UC is all of these concerns around how do I get there, and once I'm there, how do I manage this infrastructure that's supposed to support both voice and data. Yep. So he actually, as a result of the simplicity, he actually fast-tracked his project by 6 months. Golly. Yeah, and in addition, he actually took the savings and allocated more of the savings to the applications.
Oh,
so think
yep.
of what I said at the beginning,
Yep.
right? The more the customer can allocate to the application,
Sure.
the better for them in the sense of achieving the ROI.
Yep. So rather than pursuing convergence via the traditional topology of running your voice and data over the same LAN infrastructure, you know, they're able to save enough money to put the money where it really needs to be, and that's in the application side, because that's ultimately what drives convergence.
That's
So,
exactly
yeah.
right.
Yep.
And the convergence point, what's important is a lot of customers go, well, it's, you're not converged. We say, actually, we are optimized in our convergence. We're simply moving it where you're in control as the
Absolutely.
customer.
Yep. Yep.
Not a technology limitation is forcing you to put it on a switch
Yep.
fabric.
Yep.
You simply converge once in the central closet where the applications reside, and you're done.
Well, you know, it's interesting. It seems like a perfect fit for many on-premise applications. Certainly the cloud is becoming,
Yes.
you know, a huge thing, and there's a lot moving to the cloud. So in part 3, I would like to talk about the cloud and how Phybridge really can be a perfect fit with their topology with cloud applications. So please check out part 3 as we dive into that.